Hello, world. What separated your deep ball from everybody else?
My deep ball, it has a little secret sauce to it, man.
Never get too high, never get too low, but just keep moving.
The whole story is Carlos never beat me in any kind of sports in high school.
Welcome to the Orange is the New Black podcast. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, joined by my co-host, Zim. Zim, say what's up.
Hello, world. We are here. Civil War, Part 2. This is the moment that all of the Bengals Nation has been waiting for as we come to the end of this. This is a great run. I don't even know how to put it. But at the end of the day, we have a lot of people that really care about who the Bengals draft. At the end of the day, there is a lot of good options on the board. But I think Bengals Nation has narrowed it down to 2 finalists. And that will be Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase. I represent Team Chase. And Ace, you represent who? What's that guy's name?
Team Sewell. You already know.
I almost forgot his name, bro. I'm sorry.
Oh my god.
But
the disrespect.
What we're going to do is get right into it, and we want to just jump right into this. And I think, Coach, since you just had some really, really good news, congratulations on the news. I want to start you off as a member of Team Sewell. As we talk offline just now, a proud member of Team Sewell. Congratulations. Tell everybody how you're doing tonight, and then you could get right into why you think the Bengals would be better off drafting drafting Penei Sewell over Jamar Chase.
Okay, I'm glad you got his name right because I know you're a fan, first of all. I am excited because I'm now part of the Tennessee State University Tigers, Go Blue, with Eddie George. Very excited to assist him and help the staff become all we can become and go win football games. Now on to the Bengals and Penei Sewell, as you said. Listen, when you get the Bengals, where are the struggles at right now? It is in the offensive line. When I was last in Cincinnati, we had a very dominant offensive line. Andrew Whitworth, just to name one. Andre Smith. You're talking about some book and tackles, okay? The guards, who were they? Anybody know?
Clint Bowling.
Go ahead.
Bowling Zeitler.
Give me another one. Kevin
Zeitler, some dogs, for real.
Yeah. Some real guys that knew how to hunt. Now, when I think of the Cincinnati Bengals line right now,
can you name any of those players? Them said he couldn't think of the names.
Listen. When I think of it's hard. You know, I'm just being honest. But if you add Penei Sewell to this group, you now are starting to have an offensive line that can protect the number one franchise player, in my opinion, in all of football. His name is Joe Burrow. So we want to keep Joe Burrow standing. Now, I understand we can throw to these pretty guys on the outside. We already have some of those guys. Mm-hmm. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. I mean, they got some guys. But we don't have anybody we talk about that can protect so those guys can catch the ball. So I'm Penei Sewell all the way.
We've heard that before. A lot of scare tactics.
Oh, please.
Scare tactics. Is this just common sense?
He wasn't even using a scare tactic there. He was just using facts.
You can say Joe Burrow got sacked a bunch of times, and it's a fear tactic now.
It wasn't that he got sacked a bunch of times, and he got hurt.
Right. Okay, so with that said, let me rephrase that. The beginning of the scare tactics to talk about guys that maybe we don't know about 100%, or maybe they aren't Whitworth level. I get it. Some of us want Hall of Famers, all 5. I guess I'm not sure, but I'm gonna kick this right off to my man Matt Minnick, who is now a member of Team Chase. Because early on, if I remember correctly, I think you were a little bit in between. But now that we are in, what is this, April 13th or something like that? Today, talk to them, or how would you respond to you?
That works. They flipped you like that?
Yeah, how does that happen?
What is?
I've gone back and forth, and look, I mean, like Sewell is he did some very exciting things. And you watch that film, and look, the idea of pairing Sewell with Jonah Williams, whoever you want on the right, whoever you want on the left, like two just athletic guys like that, athletic freaks like that who can move around. There's definitely a huge advantage to that. But at the same time, I look at Jamar Chase, and you look at number one, and Evan can back me up with some numbers on this, I'm sure. But like, what is Joe Burrow really good at? Like throwing those back shoulder balls. He's like one of the best in the league at those passes. And Jamar Chase is incredible at making those catches. So you're pairing strength to strength, and like just about the fit between those two players, like which is, to me, has nothing to do with the fact that they spent some time together at LSU. It's just that they are good. Their strengths line up with each other, so they're a great fit for each other. And I think Chase has very underrated speed, in my opinion. Like we act like he's not fast, but he gives that component to the offense as well that they're looking for, that they need. The O-line needs to be addressed. Obviously, that is a huge priority. That's something that needs to be taken care of in a major way. But I just think that the fit for Chase is so incredible. It's just such a perfect fit for what they do and for how what Burrow does best, that I think you got to go for it.
Hugh, I think the last time the line was good was when you were here, wasn't it? This has been a reoccurring issue, I think, for this line. It's just been every offseason since you were here that they've just had a bad line.
I think it was the last time they had three good receivers too. But
I'm gonna leave this to Elise, because I know Elise from the knocks this dead.
Yeah, I'm about to say, Elise, how would you respond to Matt? Talking about the fit for Jamar Chase, and talk to the people about why are you so heavy on Team Sewell? Because you had some choice words for me.
I know you and I go back and forth in the DMs and Instagram. Listen, Jamar Chase, he's magical. He's really fun to watch. He and Joe already have that connection. He's talked to the Bengals multiple times, so I know the Bengals have interest in him. But to me, it sounds like Matt likes a sure thing. Chase is a sure thing. Sewell is a little bit more of a risk. I'm a little bit more of a risk taker, so I'm a little bit more with Penei Sewell. But I think there's a wild card to this situation, and that wild card is Frank Pollock. Frank Pollock is completely different as an offensive line coach from Jim Turner. And I think that we're going to see a lot of positive change within the current group that already exists. Jonah Williams, begging to be coached the last 2 years, didn't get it. Multiple guys were basically playing musical chairs. And Hugh, I'm sure that you remember this, but Whitworth, Zeitler, Bowling, Bodine, Andre, they used to, like, their lockers were right next to each other. They ate together in the same exact form where they would line up on the field. That's how they did everything. That's how they would sit. That's how they would be at parties. You would see them at someone's house, and that's how they would look. And with musical chairs, I think it would be really difficult for these guys to adequately adjust, especially in games. If you're, practicing guard all week and then suddenly you get thrown into the left tackle position, it's going to be a huge adjustment. So that's something that I look at. I know the run game is going to improve under Frank Pollock. He's the biggest wild card for me. Penei Sewell, obviously, we've been talking about upgrading the Bengals offensive line for a number of years. It seems like they've had trouble replacing a guy like Andrew Whitworth and a guy like Kevin Zeitler. Bowling retiring was a huge blow to Zach Taylor in 2019. So I think they just need a massive upgrade. We've been talking about this for so long. I'm tired of talking about this. I'm tired of talking about the offensive line. I'm also tired of watching the Bengals lose. I'm tired of watching Joe Burrow on his back game after game. I'm tired of watching them turn one-dimensional. I'm tired of them not committing to the run. I think if they protect Joe Burrow, protect the franchise, we'll see fireworks go off in Cincinnati.
Yeah, that was a great point, Elise. And I think Kevin Zeitler's almost been on every AFC North team since the Bengals have had a good offensive line. That's how
AFC
long
North recognizes how good he is, and they're like, "Yep, come on over here, protect my quarterback."
in Elise's point, though, she did say Frank Pollock is there, and I think there's
He's
something
the
to be
wild
said
card.
with it. But I believe that he will help out a lot of those guys play to a different level that they weren't playing to before. Also, you said that Penei is probably more of a wild card than a sure thing with Jamar Chase. I think if you're tired of losing, you need more of a sure thing.
I mean, but you also have a sure thing with a connection between Joe Burrow and Tyler Boyd, and you also see how good T. Higgins is. Those are two sure things, and he's not gonna have a problem throwing to either one or connecting with either one of those guys. And I would like to see him, have a clean pocket every once in a while. That would be nice.
Man, I'm mad Evan just fell off because I was going to ask him who's more of a sure thing in this draft at offensive line other than Penei Sewell. I don't think that there's anybody. I think if I'm not mistaken, he's PFF's #1 rated lineman in the history. And I think also, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's also okay.
Wait for Evan. Hold
Waiting.
on. While Evan's loading up. So if you guys are living under a rock and you just don't know what's going on, Evan is a big, big part of what Pro Football Focus does. So now the AC got him where he's lining it up, and he's trying to talk about what's a sure thing. And I'm not sure if Evan is there because he looks frozen on the screen. But
Evan, can you hear me? Can you hear me? So I said I heard people saying that Penei Sewell isn't a sure thing, but I'm pretty sure PFF considers him a sure thing because he was one of the greatest linemen that you guys have ever graded in the history of PFF. And if I'm not mistaken, you also have him rated higher than Jamar Chase. So technically, he's the best player available, is he not? Is Evan there? All right, we'll come back to Evan.
I swear his eyes just moved.
Just to clarify, I said he's a riskier pick.
But
he's not a sure thing. He's a little bit more of
another wild card in this situation too now that just kind of happened today. We all do recognize that the Brownies just signed another pass, right?
Yep,
and
another one.
The guy on the other side of Mount
yeah, that's dangerous.
They better be able to protect, or else it could be detrimental to everything they're trying to do. So again, Chase about them guys. I don't care how fast he is. You can put
the most innovative.
You can put no DBs there and say drop back and throw. They might be tracking him down as soon as he put his foot in the ground.
Coach, I was waiting for that moment right there. Before I let you say something, Andre, the most creative, innovative offensive mind that I know personally, is Mr. Hugh Jackson, right? Yeah. If I have Jamar Chase, I have Tyler Boyd, I have T. Higgins, and I have you spread out in different type of formations that you like to run, I'm going to dictate a lot of different coverages. I'm going to dictate a lot of different things that I'm not trying to go mano-a-mano with Clowney or anything like that. I'm going to take them out of their comfort zone. I'm going to run a lot of different things that they're not going to be able to keep up with that. If I'm spreading you out, I'm going to make you hesitate on a lot of different things that you want to do, Mr. Clowney or Mr. Garrett.
I love your point, but I had all of that with Andrew Whitworth and Andre Smith, Kevin Zeitler, Cliff Bowley. Those guys were the key to it all. I'm being very honest with you. Without those guys, I couldn't do what I do. So I appreciate what you're saying, and you can only as creative as your players are. So I'm just concerned when we get ready to take this franchise quarterback, who I think is one of the best players in the National Football League, and putting behind a line, and Coach Pollock is phenomenal, but he's only as good as the players he has. And he'll make some guys better, but he needs some real talent. Got to have talent in the National Football League, coach, that have a chance to be good. So there is some talent there, but boy, they can really upgrade it by taking a very good offensive lineman and really make it. If I'm Joe Burrow, I'm standing out, I'm kicking down the door, I'm sending messages, emails, everything. I need an offensive lineman.
So Hugh, you also knew about Myles Garrett as well. So if you have to take somebody to tango with that man, can you just throw any old guy at him? You just want to throw whoever at him?
Oh no, you cannot do that. You most certainly can't do that. You're not gonna throw any old guy at Jadeveon Clowney either. You can't do that.
Coach, let me ask you this though. So with the offensive line, and this is something actually like Daniel Jeremiah earlier today tweeted out something about how defenses will focus on the weakest part of the offensive line. I actually think in Cleveland, Joe Woods does a great job. The other people on this podcast will remember he was the guy that I wanted for the Bengals defensive coordinator when that job was open. I think he did a great job of moving around Myles Garrett last year, creating matchups for him. Last year, the Bengals, we all talk about Bobby Hart, but they have more problems in the interior of the line. So, Penei Sewell is like maybe 1/4 of fixing that problem. So how much of an impact does one guy really have versus, hey, we go chase, and then 2 and 3 we're gonna get some good line talent. We're gonna get a tackle in the second. We're gonna develop Hakeem Adeniji, Fred Johnson, those guys. How much of an impact does one guy make in that situation?
I think if it's the right guy, it makes a lot of impact because you want a guy that can shut down Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. That regardless of what side you play on, you got to have bookend tackles that can handle that rush. The inside part, I totally agree with you. That's a mess too. I mean, that's the closest way to the quarterback. It's a mess. So I don't disagree with you, but you got to start stacking because you got this premium draft capital, right? So you got to take this capital and you got to get the right one. And you have to make sure that Joe Burrow is standing because he's shown, regardless of who's playing receiver, he's going to hit hands. He's going to give guys a chance to make catch on the ball. So I'm going to do everything I can to fix this offensive line. When Bengals have been really good, they had a really good offensive line. And to me, just look at the history of the organization. It normally been great defensive backs and offensive line. Okay, and obviously receivers. That it kind of worked off that particular flow. But right now, they've kind of gotten away from that. I think they're starting to get the defensive backs back to where they used to be. But they got to fix this offensive line. They got to fix it fast.
And just a disclaimer, Team Sewell is not against just saying draft Penei Sewell and we're done with the line. We're definitely, I know me personally, I'm still looking for more. I'm still looking for way more. I might need another guard. Even if they play Sewell like guard, I still need another guard in my opinion.
Talk to Mace.
Go ahead, Zem. You on mute. You on mute, bro. Okay, hold on. There you go.
Yeah, you had me muted. You was trying to mute me. Sabotage me. All right, listen. One thing that I want to make very, very clear, and I don't know, I can't speak for all the other members for Team Chase, is that I want to be able to draft multiple offensive linemen because of all of the different holes in these different spots. So that's the reason why I think it's just a big issue where everyone's talking about they got to fix the line. Yeah, we want to fix the line, but we want to go and get the elite talent and don't pass up on the possible AJ Green right there in your face. AJ Green level talent that you all said was a great fit, right? So you do that, but you come back because of the draft pool is so heavy with interior linemen, as you just pointed out, is very heavy with those with the interior linemen. So we're trying to come back in rounds 2 and probably 3 or 4, but 2 linemen come back right after that. Because one of the things that I think Matt was kind of posing the question to you is that just because you have Penei Sewell, that doesn't fix all of these holes, because you just made a point, Coach, that there are several holes, and one guy can't fix all of that. Is the one thing that I think most people that I know that want us to draft Jamar Chase kind of believe.
But we do agree that Jamar Chase doesn't fix that hole.
The thing is,
he doesn't fix that hole. Right?
Hugh, do you think Jamar Chase is AJ Green?
No.
Okay. I just was checking.
Let's get Andre Parada. I'm sorry, you've been very, very patient. Please allow yourself to state your case for Team Chase.
Great. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here, especially with Coach Jackson. Coach Jackson, congrats on the position, joining Eddie George's staff. It's an honor to be here with Elise as well. I followed you, and of course, Ace and Sim. Thanks for having me back on again. I've been on Matt's podcast. I know Evan, of course. So thanks for having me on. One thing I think we want to discuss that's missing is obviously we're talking about what the Bengals need. In the first round, and when you approach any draft, Coach, you would know this. You sat on in draft rooms. When you're picking at 5, you want to get you're not drafting for need. You want to get the best player available. Obviously, at a position of need, you're not going to draft a quarterback if he's the best position. Of course, they have that. But you want to draft the best position available, the best talent, a blue chip talent. You heard comments from Duke Tobin saying he's probably not going to trade down because he doesn't want to lose out on that blue chip prospect. And so to me, the analysis is if we're just assuming no trade down and we take Kyle Pitts out of the equation, which I do like Kyle Pitts, I think he's going to be a phenomenal NFL player. I think he's one of the safest prospects to come out in a long time, even including the positional value of tight end or lack of value. But if we just analyze these two prospects, you look at factors that would tend to say that this person has the possibility to really succeed at the next level. And for both players, I want to be honest, both players check a lot of boxes. I mean, you can't go wrong with either Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell. Any pick would be a good pick. The question to me is, what is the best pick? What is the best course of action to take that aligns with getting a blue chip talent at 5, but also aligns with the value in the rest of the draft class? And fortunately for the Bengals, the way they've attacked or approached free agency, I think they should have done more in the offensive line in the offseason in free agency. I was on the make Joe Thuney the highest paid guard in the NFL. I tweeted out his proposed contract. I think he would have given serious consideration to the contract proposal I tweeted out, which was much more substantial, I think, than what the Bengals ended up offering, although we don't know the exact terms. So I'm a proponent of fixing the offensive line. The offensive line is incredibly important, but it's a unit, right? The issue is one player, like no matter how talented Penei Sewell is, and he's immensely talented, and he wouldn't be a bad pick, but would picking Penei Sewell solve all the offensive line problems? The answer to me is no. And even then, if you come back to Ace's point and other points made by members of Team Sewell, that we can double dip in the offensive line. Well, of course, that's fine. And the reality is, where the value of this draft class hits, the value is likely going to hit at pick 38 again. So now you've double dipped the offensive line. You've solved that problem now. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, you get a player like an Alex Leatherwood from Alabama, who's projected to go late first round, maybe early second. You've now, to me, fixed the offensive line. You've added Penei Sewell, you've added Alex Leatherwood. You get all that. That's fine. But to me, you're missing out on adding a potential elite receiving option in the NFL, a player who directly affects the passing game on every down. And the way the NFL is moving, and TJ, I'm glad TJ jumped on, he knows this. The way the NFL is moving, it's a passing league.
Yeah.
Let me finish my point here. It's a passing league, right? So I want the player the elite prospect that directly affects the passing game. And that is a player like Jamar Chase. Coach Jackson, you mentioned with all the prominent Bengals O-lines, and that's certainly true. I mean, you had Big Whit, who was a second-round pick, by the way, Andre Smith. And I want to bring everybody's attention, because people may not realize this. Prior to the 2011 draft, Andre Smith was on the bust path. 2009 and 2010 were rough seasons for Andre. And 2011, need I remind everybody, Carson Palmer retired. He threatened retirement. He quit, okay? He walked out on the Bengals. The Bengals at that point, going into the 2011 draft, did not have the most important player at the most important position. They did not have a quarterback. So if you remember that 2011 draft, what could the Bengals have done? If they're approaching it just on what I hear from the team Sewell is, we need to protect Joe Burrow. We don't want his knee shredded, as if anybody wants Joe Burrow's knees to be shredded. And again, I can go back to the value of where the class of this draft class, there's going to be value at pick 38. Since Andre Smith's draft class of 09, I'll go back to the point I was making about the 2011 draft and AJ Green. But since Andre Smith's draft class of 2009, there have only been there's been one time where there have been at least 7 offensive tackles picked by pick 38 where the Bengals picked. And that was in 2019. There were 7 offensive tackles picked. I count at least 10 offensive tackles that I would be more than comfortable with at pick 38, assuming, let's say, that they hit the high water mark again and there are 7 offensive tackles taken by pick 38 or pick 37 when the Bengals go on the clock for 38. The bottom 3 offensive tackles that I'm talking about are in no order, but like a Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame, a Dylan Randus from North Carolina State, and maybe like a Jalen Mayfield from Michigan, who maybe projects more towards guard because he didn't test that well at Michigan's pro day. But I'd be fine with any of those. And that's not even mentioning any of the stud interior offensive linemen that are likely going to be there at 38. A Landon Dickerson, a Creed Humphrey, potentially a Wyatt Davis, although Wyatt Davis, I think his value hits more in the 3rd round. But I want to tie it back into 2011 because what Coach Jackson said, which is very important. The Bengals historically, you can go back to the 88 season with Munoz and Montoya. You go back to the 05 season with, Pittsburgh won the Super Bowl, but we would have beat Pittsburgh in that game. I'm not saying the Bengals would have won the Super Bowl, but the Bengals beat Pittsburgh if Carson Palmer's knee doesn't get shredded. Those teams had great offensive lines. They also had great receiving weapons. So to me, the issue is both are important. Both are high value, incredibly valuable positions. There is some research at PFF at its nascent stages, although the early data is showing, though, when it's a one-on-one issue, when it's one elite game-breaking receiver, back in Chad Johnson, back in his day when he was playing with TJ, or a Jamar Chase potentially, that value is higher than one elite offensive lineman. Because, again, the offensive line works in a unit. And to me, when you marry that with the strength of this draft class, which luckily for the Bengals happens to be offensive line, I think you get the best value by adding the elite receiving target who checks all the boxes, right? The kid was 19 years old. In that national championship game, he abused a guy by the name of A.J. Terrell. A.J. Terrell was a 16th overall pick in last year's draft. A.J. Terrell had a decent rookie year. He had a very good rookie year, and he projects to have a very good career. He abused a top 10 pick, C.J. Henderson. Abuse may be a strong word, but he had a great game against C.J. Henderson, a cornerback from Florida who went pick number 9. He also had a great game, I think it was against Trayvon Diggs in the Alabama game. Diggs was a second-round pick, but Diggs had a good rookie season for Dallas. He did struggle a little bit against Cameron Dantzler. Maybe his length gave him a little bit of issue, but okay, he's 19 years old. He struggled a little bit against one guy. But Jamar Chase checks every box. There is nothing that Jamar Chase is not good at from a physical standpoint, from a production standpoint, in the best, and essentially the AAA of the NFL. Let's just be honest. This SEC is the AAA of the NFL. Jamar Chase was a dominant player. And then you have the Burrow connection, which to me is not the determinative factor, but it is nice icing on the cake that they've actually shown that. Like when the Bengals scouted every pass of Joe Burrow, they saw every reception of Jamar Chase. So the scouting report was they have it right here. They've seen the production. And so what I guess I'll say is, the final point, I apologize for going on longer than needed. I think the way the class works out, the best course of action here would be to get that elite receiving option and then to come back in 38, and potentially then at 69 in the third round and load up on your offensive line. As everybody's identified, the real weakness with the Bengals offensive line have been the porous guard play, the interior line. They did sign Riley Reif. Riley Reif is a good player. He's advanced in age, but I think he can give you a year, possibly even more on a smaller extension. So he can be a viable option. Jonah Williams, I think, has all the makings to be a good left tackle. And by the way, Myles Garrett, went around Jonah Williams for a monster sack last year. Was in the home game against Cincinnati. He caused a fumble on the play. Actually, Jonah Williams went back and tried to recover the fumble and then fumbled again. But the point is, even a good young left tackle like Jonah Williams is going to struggle against Myles Garrett. Everybody will struggle against Myles Garrett. I think when you have the ability to add a game-breaking receiver, the way the NFL is moving. Granted, everybody's talked about how physical Jamar Chase is, right? He's at the catch point.
Let me cut you off right there, Andre. You brought up a really good point about a game-breaking wide receiver. Great, right? And that's what I want everybody to understand, the impact of that. I think no one that I could think of probably would know about game-breaking wide receivers more than TJ Ushmanzada. TJ, are you there? I know you were walking around.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
There he is.
I wanted to make sure too, and Andre, I thank you for all those great points. I wanted to make sure that you were not driving and trying to come to the Civil War Part 2 at the same time. So that's very important.
Yeah, I was driving. My daughter just decided she wants to play softball a couple months ago, so this is her second practice. Yeah, but
how you doing this afternoon?
I'm chilling, man. I'm good. How y'all?
Good.
Come on, man.
Doing great now.
Hey, Hugh. By the way, congrats, my man. Now,
thanks,
you gotta go show them up. You know what you're doing, baby.
Absolutely.
I get what Andre is saying, and I'm a receiver, so I want to draft a receiver, but I'm a football guy. I understand the game of football, and so he brought up how me, Chad, and Chris Henry, we were successful. But what you need to bring up is none of us were drafted in the first round. Chad was drafted in the second round. I basically was a free agent, and Chris Henry was a 3rd-round pick. And so I'll give you 4 guys that the Bengals could draft in the 2nd round that they can just flat.
Give me those names in a second. TJ, if I can respond to that in one.
They're gonna be all slot receivers. Give me them names.
TJ, give me those names in 1 second. Let me respond to your point about not being 1st-round picks. If you had a redraft of the 2001 draft,
no. Let him continue this thought.
A redraft does. I mean, hey, if we could redraft shit, I'd have a lot more money in the bank too.
Right. You're not a 7th-round pick. You're not a 7th-round pick. Actually, one of the reasons I love Jamar Chase because he plays the game like you used to play, TJ. He plays like a defensive player.
Jamar, I don't know who he trained with. I was supposed to train him for the combine, but I wasn't going to Texas, and he didn't want to come to California. But he needs to clean up. He plays very high at the line of scrimmage. Guys get hands on him, and he just overpowers them. He's not going to do that in the league. He has to clean that up. Like, he's talented, but he has flaws that he needs to clean up. Now, I'm going to give you 4 guys that I like that the Bengals get in the 2nd round. These guys can play. And with John Ross gone, they need speed. They need guys that can stretch the field. Tutu Atwell can do that. He's going to beat anybody one-on-one. Rondell Moore, he can do that. He's going to beat anybody one-on-one. Elijah Moore and Terrace Marshall Jr. Those 4 guys will be there. One of those 4 will be there.
Terrace Marshall not going to be there.
Terrace Marshall not going to be there. Those other guys are projected.
And the other guys are 5'9".
Those other guys are
also, while y'all talking, when has the first receiver outperformed all the other receivers? Who on this podcast had Justin Jefferson outperforming everybody last year?
But Justin Jefferson should show you that Jamar Chase is the safest pick because Chase was a better prospect than Justin Jefferson.
On the same team with Jefferson.
He's a great player.
So was CeeDee Lamb. So was any receiver that went before Justin Jefferson in that draft. And you can always get good receivers in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. We just did it with T. Higgins. You talk about redrafts. They just did a redraft where T. Higgins was picked 9th.
Guys,
and we got him in the 2nd round.
Let me tie in the point of the 2011 draft that I was trying to make with Coach Jackson was Andre Smith, right? The Bengals didn't have a quarterback in 2011 because Carson left the team. And so you could have made the argument, reach for a quarterback. It's the most important position. You need that. The Bengals stuck to their board and picked A.J. Green. You know who else was on the board when the Bengals picked? And because of Andre Smith's struggles his first 2 years when he looked like a bust, and then Andre went up and had developed into a nice right tackle. But Tyron Smith, who was also the last 20-year-old offensive tackle, same conference as Penei Sewell. Tyron Smith, who was an all-pro left tackle for the Dallas Cowboys, was on the board. He went 5 picks later to pick 9.
But who did the
Bengals make the wrong pick by selecting A.J. Green over the sure tackle? Nobody would say they did. And A.J. Green was the right pick to make. I think you can make the same analysis and have the same analysis in 2011, literally 10 years later, where you and then also you marry up the value of this draft. You get the game breaker like A.J. was. Honestly, Jamar Chase has a higher floor than A.J. A.J. came in the league when he was 23. He turned 23 the week before training camp. Jamar Chase just turned 21. TJ, you make a great point. No prospect is flawless, right? TJ, you made a great point about, he struggles a little bit off the line, but he also dominated off the line. He was 19 years old. He can get physically stronger. He's strong as an ox. He plays the game, TJ, the way you play. He plays like the way Steve Smith used to play. He plays the game like a defensive player. And you add that to the Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, now you've just increased the level of your offense to a level that can compete with Kansas City.
All right, Andre. We let you go, bro.
We get pick starting in 69. Well,
I want to judge you. We got to let Joe talk. Hold on. All right, go ahead, TJ.
Who were the Bengals receivers in 2011? I'm not 100% certain. I know before they drafted AJ. Who did they have on the team?
Before they drafted guys AJ, they had
Andre Caldwell, Jerome Simpson. Remember they drafted Ryan Whalen that year as well.
And that's why you draft AJ Green right there, just because of those names you said. That's why you draft AJ.
But AJ was the highest rated player on their board. It's not like they didn't draft AJ for need. They drafted AJ.
Caldwell. When you have Andre Caldwell, Jerome Simpson, and whoever else, you don't have you have anyone. You don't have.
They didn't have a quarterback right now.
They didn't have a quarterback. They didn't have a right tackle.
AJ Green left 110 targets off this previous team that just left, right? I mean, AJ Green just left the roster, 110 targets. You want to replace them, and the guys that you just brought up. You brought up 4 guys. One guy nobody on this panel thinks is still going to be there, and Terrace Marshall. So now you're down to 3 people. One of them was Elijah Moore, who is a complete dog, but he's a slot.
No, then you got. See, that's a problem. That's a problem with the NFL, and Hugh will tell you this.
Okay.
You get a small guy, and because he's small, you put him in a slot.
Right.
Why? You put his ass on the outside, nobody's touching him.
Facts.
But he didn't play that much.
But do you think that this staff is going to see it that way? This staff not going to see it that way?
He never aligned that way in
This
Purdue
is
anyway.
a copycat league. Rondale Moore, Tutu Atwell, and Elijah Moore. You know why they're rated high? It's because of Tyreek Hill. Everybody want that guy you put on the outside and you can't run with. They too quick. They're too fast. It's a copycat league. Like, you can get those guys in the second round. The games are won and lost up front, man.
Look, nobody's saying to ignore the
Can't hear
offensive
you,
line.
TJ.
We're looking at where the value of this draft hits, and the value hits clearly in the second round. Because if you do take Penei Sewell, then the likelihood of the best player available at 38 is probably going to be another offensive lineman. Great, we fixed the offensive line. You know who's had the best offensive line prior to all their injuries recently? The Dallas Cowboys. You know what they realized when they had Dak, when Dak was balling out? We need a weapon. You know what they did? They traded for Amari Cooper, and then they gave him a $100 million contract. And also, I want to mention this. A lot of people took the approach of the Buffalo Bills with their offensive line. What did the Buffalo Bills do? The Buffalo Bills fixed their offensive line. They fixed it with a bunch of no-name guys. Their right tackle is Darrell Williams, who was a fifth-round pick. Their left tackle is Deion Dawkins, who forced Cordy Glenn.
And they have a quarterback that can run. They have a quarterback that can run. You got a quarterback. Hugh, what you think? You the coach up here, baby.
Right.
I've already knocked it out of the park.
Okay, so Hugh already went. This is one person, TJ, you came in a little bit short. Evan McPhillips from Pro Football Focus was trying to get his stuff together. I think I got him ready, and I think I got him locked and loaded, because this is what I've been wanting to give you the whole entire time, and I want to give you the real numbers, because you're throwing out some fantasy stuff to me, TJ. I'm gonna be honest. Like some of them things, I love Elijah Moore, but the Bengals not drafting Elijah Moore. I know that. Evan McPhillips, please talk to these people, please.
All right, so I should have all my issues here worked out. So I'll try and run through this as quickly as I can, and then hopefully we can hit on a couple points and hopefully hit everything that Zim wants us to hit. First thing I wanted to say is that Dalton and Carson both had pretty good lines and got hurt in those same years. That's, it's there's not a direct correlation that a good O-line is going to stop you from getting hurt. There's freak accidents. We know that happens. You do have a couple guys in Boyd and Higgins that are really, really good receivers, but that's two. And that's a slot receiver and it's an outside receiver. And Boyd definitely has had success in the outside when he has been there. But they do still need a third receiver. They're going 4 wide, 3 wide, 5 wide as much as anybody in the league. They need to have this depth. And as much as I love Auden Tate, he is a talented receiver, especially considering his draft profile and his athleticism that he succeeds in spite of. He is good. But I don't know if I want to rely on him as an outside receiver. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and get into a little bit about Chase, and then we can look at our O-line and wide receiver kind of value and talk about that. So people first say there's a Jamar Chase every year. There isn't. There are good wide receivers every year. But this guy's physique, production, and athleticism are unique. His 40-yard dash is in the 98th percentile. His 41-inch vertical is 96. His 13-foot broad jump is 96. And his 3.98-second short shuttle is 97. This guy is explosive. And we see it on tape. He's gotten even better as an athlete, because anyone who watches that year and then sees him as his athletic numbers goes, wow, this guy got more athletic than what I saw as a 19-year-old on tape. So if he's gotten better as that athlete, you can project that he's probably going to be able to separate more, which we'll get to as one of his issues. A lot of people like to say, oh, he's barely 6 foot. Well, there's other wide receivers who succeed at that height. Stefon Diggs, OBJ, Amari Cooper, DJ Moore, DeAndre Hopkins. You don't have to be Mike Evans to win on the outside. You don't have to be 6'5".
DeAndre Hopkins 6'2". DeAndre Hopkins is 6'2".
They've got him listed. I hear that. All right, he plays great.
Evan, you're killing me with these analytics.
But hey, Evan. But who did? I could have sworn.
Oh, man.
I could have sworn. What does PFF think about Penei Sewell though? Because I heard some good things about Penei Sewell.
There are analysts like Mike Renner is one. I believe Austin Gale is on the same train. Where
Evan, don't let him take you off your game. Don't go down that Penei Sewell road. He's trying to
rated. I'm not here to say good things about Penei Sewell. I'm here to say good things about Jamar Chase. I'll let you guys.
Don't let him try to pivot you off that.
He's rated number 2 though, right? Penei Sewell's rated number 2. I thought I heard that he's one of the best linemen that PFF has ever scouted in their history.
He's exceptional. He's an exceptional prospect. But I'll get to that point too, where I talk a little bit about how top tackles aren't always the top tackle from that draft that we're looking at, and how often is that coming into play. So another thing, Jamar Chase, knock on him, he's not as shifty. Well, He may not be that sudden quick, but he still forces mixed tackles through his strength. He is great at reading leverage in the open field, destroying these tackling angles, and finding ways to pick up extra yards. He actually forced missed tackles at a higher rate than Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Rashad Bateman, and Elijah Moore. His rate of missed tackles of 0.252 per attempt ranks in the 93rd percentile among all Power 5 receivers since 2014. So this guy can create space even if he's not sudden. He can find ways to make tacklers miss, and that makes him very much a threat. Also, obviously, he's a great contested catch receiver. We know he has the body control. He has that little DeAndre Hopkins sudden push off, little tiny arm off that you need, the little savvy stuff, the variation of his speed and his routes that helps him to get that separation even when he's not quite as sudden as other guys like Jalen Waddle. Looking at the wide receiver, you see these stable metrics that go year to year, right? And some of these most stable predictive metrics for wide receivers that we found so far are receiving grade, your receiving grade versus single coverage and zone, your separation, your yards per route run, ADOT, and largely YAC per reception, right? So these are some really important indicators that'll tell you they're likely to repeat this year after year, right? And he's excellent at some of the most stable metrics, including a healthy 3.5 yards per route run. So every time he's running a route, he's generating almost 3.5 yards for you. That's extremely valuable. He has a 92.4 PFF grade when facing man coverage. He's got 24 deep catches, which is the most we've seen in a single season, and it still ranks first among receivers over the last 2 seasons when he opted out. He's got an absurd 15 touchdowns coming from that far with just 1 drop on 36 deep targets. So
One drop.
Despite on those deep targets, 36 deep targets of 20 or more yards. So despite not having that traditional explosiveness, he finds ways to get open and he makes the most of all of his opportunities downfield. Now, I mentioned the separation concern, right? He ranks in the 51st percentile in separation among versus single coverage, which is not great, but he doesn't need to create 3 yards of separation. This is
Evan, you are killing me, man.
Get him, Hugh. Get him, Hugh.
Evan, all right, Evan, for 1 second, because I'm gonna tell you right now.
Evan, can he play or can he not play? God dang.
And
I want you to play. I don't think that guy can play.
Would you run a 4.3 if you had the stopwatch at your pro day and not the actual stuff? Is that a real 40 time?
I mean, there's scouts that are using the hand watch, brother. That's the time they're using. I mean, you can speak to that, right? That's the time they're using when they look in the draft room, right?
Jamar can run.
Jamar can run, but it really I'm a receiver. But if you understand football, games are won up front, man. Like, this is baffling me. Games are won up front.
Trenches.
Well, can I talk a little bit about maybe O-line and wide receiver?
You guys are talking about. I'm gonna let you guys in on a secret. Everybody talks about how fast he is. I'm gonna give you an analogy that I tell my guys when we train, and y'all gonna steal this shit too. So give me credit when you steal it. If you have the fastest car in the Indy 500 and you crash on the first lap, does it matter how fast you are?
Nope.
It doesn't matter. If you can't decelerate and create separation, it doesn't matter how fast you are. PFF, y'all don't do that. I just gave y'all free games. Y'all gonna stick with it too. And so you have to be able to decelerate. You have to be able to create separation. That's why guys like Troy Williamson, who was 6'2", 210 pounds, ran a 4.31, couldn't play. He couldn't decelerate. You have to be able to decelerate, create separation. I can be as fast as I want, but when it's time to turn left, if I run into the wall, I'm out the race.
The one thing I will say is I feel like Evan was making a strong case on why Jamar Chase is on paper, analytically, the correct pick, right?
Dude,
but
no
more so what I'm looking for is for him to state the case for the pool of offensive linemen that are in the draft that y'all are totally ignoring by just saying, I have to have Penei. I have to have it at number 5.
Rashawn Slater. It could be
look, the same way, TJ, the same way you just came with the 4 dudes. You got 4 dudes. That's it. I got 12 dudes that would start at guard in the second and the third round.
Same.
But they're all working in the interior.
Not all of them are good run blockers. Not all of them are pass blockers. Not all of them
I'm
can
going
do
to say
both.
this again, Zim. Can they block Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney consistently?
No.
They're
No.
both guys. You can't block
TJ
Myles
Watt.
Garrett.
All
Joe
of those
Williams could have blocked Myles
That's what
Garrett
you
on a
got.
couple plays.
Jonah Williams could not block. He struggled with Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett ate him for lunch that first
That's
game.
what it
Myles
comes
Garrett
down
abuses 2
to.
tackles.
You have to look within your division that you're in and figure out what you need to win.
Facts.
I understand value. I understand all of that. But if I can't block Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, I'm not going to win. They're the 2 best rushers
20-year-old
in the division.
So 20-year-old Penei Sewell is just going to come in and just start blocking Cam Hayward on the on the interior of the line.
That he has athleticism, the strength, and the anchor.
The size
You're absolutely
that
right.
other guys don't have.
He's an
That's
elite
what Joe
prospect,
Thomas
no
did.
doubt. What I think is we have to look at what the Bengals have done and haven't done so far, right? Bobby Hart, their turnstile right tackle, is now backing up in Buffalo. Riley Reif is a significant upgrade. Yes, he's advanced in age, but he's your starting right tackle. If they draft Penei Sewell, Riley could potentially kick inside. But it's not like.
But as Evan, how bad was Bobby Hart last year?
Booted out of the place because
he was never.
His best year was worse than Reif's worst year. So Bobby Hart had a career year, which was still really unacceptable. It's not passable. You need to replace that. Michael Jordan, who I still think can carve a nice little career for himself. I'm not giving up on Mike Jordan, but I don't think you should go into the season as a starting left guard. In fact, he's probably not. You resign.
You're not, Andre. You're not going to sell none of these people on the existing linemen.
The point I'm trying to make is the Bengals, to a lesser degree, have adopted the Buffalo Bills approach to the fixing the offensive line, which is we're going to add some. The Bengals haven't done it to the extent Buffalo did, but we're going to add some serviceable players, more than serviceable, guys who have shown that they've done well. Bring them in, have them compete, have a good offensive line, and then what did Buffalo do? Buffalo traded for Stephon Diggs because they needed playmakers.
All the Bengals nation is disappointed. They took 2 linemen a few years back that didn't pan out.
Thank you.
Let's just be honest.
They
didn't pan out. So everybody's
energy they have for John Ross, though.
That's called evaluation. So everybody's scared about boy.
That's what the fear is.
Might not be able to do it. Let me tell you something. It's called. You better understand what you're drafting. And that's what this is all about. You got the 5th tick of the draft. You need to go get the best freaking lineman to protect the girl. You can say it's not Penei Sewell, but I'm going to tell you one thing. Chase ain't going to protect him. I'm just telling you guys. He is not a protector.
At least is that the way you feel?
If Joe Burrow is standing, guys, he don't have a chance. And you guys keep saying, well, we're going to get another lineman. That's why linemen are picked in the first round. And other ones are picked in the second round. And other ones are picked in the third round. Because if they're that good, they'd be picked in the first round. So let's just call it like it is. This guy is up there as the best lineman in the draft for a reason.
And the Bengals haven't had the chance, like you're saying, to pick the first best lineman. Cedric Ogbuehi, he wasn't the first lineman selected. Jake Fisher wasn't. Like, that's what you guys want. You want the leftovers. We don't want the leftovers. We want one of those top 2 guys.
I don't want
leftovers.
I want the AJ Green. I want the best receiver.
I want to be able to get. I want to get the very best thing in life. Anything that you can do where you can make yourself an elite at that particular thing. If I have the most elite wide receiver core and I can take off from day one with that, and then I'm coming back with multiple offensive linemen that had no business being in the first place. The same reason that we got T. Higgins is the same reason why I think I can get a Leatherwood, or I can get a Sam Cosmi, or I can get a Dylan Radins. I can get all of these guys that had no business being there in the second round this draft, which I couldn't have said in the year before or the year before that. The same thing doesn't work for wide receivers in this draft. If you pass on it and then you rely on
who are the best wide receivers in this draft? Who are they?
They're all going to be in the first round. And they're going to be gone.
Name them all.
I'm sorry, but what makes you guys think that when they draft a wide receiver that he's going to be utilized correctly? Because AJ Green was not utilized correctly. At least if you get an offensive lineman, you've got Frank Clark helping the guys who are already on the line, and then you add another elite offensive lineman who can work with them. I'm not trying to throw a ton of shade, but dang, guys, like, how do you know he's going to be utilized correctly? You don't know that.
I love AJ. AJ was just a shell of his former self last year. It wasn't his Yaki. In fact, they had a lot of deep passes to AJ. He caught 50% of it.
He wasn't communicated to either. He didn't know what was going on. He was never communicated to.
That may be a problem with
himself. You get him the ball.
Get him the ball.
He
wasn't targeted. How could he do anything when he wasn't even being targeted in some games?
Yeah, how many games did he go when he didn't even receive a target?
Like we saw the TJ on this show, and he was like, they didn't even get him involved early in the game.
The funniest thing to me is y'all talking about Penei Sewell like he was in some offense that didn't just – they only threw 400 times the last time y'all saw him. And y'all don't even have that many reps on him, but y'all automatically just assume
he won the Outland Trophy, right? At 20 years old?
On an RPO offense that's quick screening people to death. Like, it's not what y'all –
people don't even believe that Jamar Chase was the best receiver coming out.
He was the best. Yeah, he was the best receiver on the team with Justin Jefferson, and Justin Jefferson could have been rookie of the year.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. That's why he sat out the year. I'm with you. But is he the best receiver in this class?
They act like Devontae Smith isn't there. He don't exist. Jalen Waddle don't
exist. The best
either,
offensive lineman in this draft. You might hear Slater. You might hear
That's
Penei.
it. Penei and Slater.
So this is gonna sound crazy because I'm on Team Chase here, but like, and Coach, you said this a few times.
I knew you was gonna do this.
It's finding the right guy. I think Devontae Smith's the best receiver in this draft.
I think so too.
I just don't think he's the right guy for the Bengals. I just don't think he's the right guy for the Bengals.
Thank you.
I think Chase
just because he's 170 pounds, he's not the best. Okay.
It goes back to TJ said. If they don't have anybody that can catch the field with that kind of speed, it's a whole different ball game. It's a different ball game. Mm-hmm. That guy is different. He's different.
I mean, that's what I look at. I mean, I think we're kind of getting against the fact that both of these guys are incredible, and I think to again coming to from the other angle and speaking of what Chase said about. Or excuse me, I'm looking at your nickname on there, Zim. What Zim said about having an elite unit of receivers by adding him. I think you put Penei and Jonah together, you might have the two best young tackles in the league. Like, they're both freak athletes too.
Clowney and Myles Garrett.
We've talked a lot about. We talked a lot about, and by the way, I'm still Team Chase. They haven't turned me, but I'm just saying, like there are two sides to this debate. That you look at. We talked a lot about Cleveland.
Bye, Zim. Bye, Zim.
This is how I felt when Willie turned on me. This is how it feels.
You got TJ Watt lining up on your right side. You need a really good right tackle, and I mean that's what they should do with Penei, because they should leave Jonah alone. Like, so. You can argue that from both sides is all I'm trying to say. But
hey, why are the Ravens always good? Why are the Ravens always good? They always have a good offensive line.
They got three good corners too. Three great corners.
All right.
Offensively, they run the ball on everybody before Lamar and after Lamar because their offensive line is good. Name a receiver that they have. They drafted so many of them, Travis Taylor, all these different guys.
And that's why they won't win a Super Bowl.
They've been trying to have weapons too this offseason.
We the Bengals, bro. We just trying to get to the playoffs. Get to the playoffs and let's worry about that after.
You got a player like you got a quarterback like Joe Burrow. To Elisa's point earlier, she mentioned Frank Pollock, and I do think again, I don't think anybody on here thinks that the Bengals did enough in the offseason to address the offensive line. Luckily, though, with the value in this draft, you're going to get some good offensive linemen at pick 38 and 69. Now, maybe you double dip and you take Sewell first, but you still leave your team with a massive hole at an incredibly important position. One thing I will say this about Chase, with his physical nature of play, TJ, I've mentioned this many times already, he plays the game like you play. With that chip on his shoulder, he plays like a defensive player. And
I like the way you throw that in there. You know,
let me tell you why I'm trying to make the last point. Because
that
the
boy
way
was really good. He was the best at what he did. But look at here.
Shine those shoes. Shine those shoes is a terrible towel, TJ. That was my favorite highlight.
Chase is not TJ. Chase ain't TJ. I'm just telling you, Chase ain't TJ. You can forget that one.
It needs to be in the Bengals Ring of Honor. TJ, you need to be in there. But Jamar Chase is an elite prospect. Let me add, the point I'm trying to make with Jamar is with the way the game is played, and Coach, you know this, you were a wide receivers coach.
Just FYI, my phone for some reason, I'm at 6%, so if it hangs up, just FYI.
Last point. I appreciate your time already, man. I appreciate you.
Can I just make the last point about, I haven't made the point yet. The way Jamar Chase plays the game, with the way games are officiated, a little hand check, a little defensive holding, a little legal contact is a 5-yard penalty, and it's an automatic first down. You know how many times Jamar Chase is going to extend drives by just drawing defensive
But Andre, I will say this. I respect what you're saying, but that's going to be different for him when he come in this league. He gonna have
He's
to
shown
earn
it.
that. That's not
bro.
going. That's not
He's
going
shown
to
it against
It's
SEC
different.
competition, Coach. He's already shown it. He abused AJ Terrell. Go watch the championship game. AJ Terrell is going to be a good corner. He already abused him. He was 2 years younger.
I think
That's not Marlon Humphrey though, and that's not elite corners that are
Marlon
in the
Humphrey's a
league.
Bama
That's
corner.
not
Trayvon
Jalen
Diggs
Ramsey. That's not Jalen Ramsey.
I think we've come to a good closing point in this whole ordeal. I feel like we both like the players. I think Hugh is kind of discounting my man Chase a lot. But I do think we all agree that we do like Penei Sewell and we do like Jamar Chase.
Right.
It's just people, some people want to get, offensive line fixed earlier. Whereas I think I'm team Chase.
It's a necessity.
I'm gonna say this, Zim, and I'm gonna leave it alone. Some people want Joe Burrow standing, and some people want Joe Burrow on his back. That's what
I want Joe Burrow flying.
Let's just keep it real.
Listen. All right, well, let me ask you this. What do you think, knowing what you know about the Bengals, Elise, and I want to go through everybody on here, knowing what you know, starting with Elise, who do you think the Bengals actually draft on draft night?
I think I'm going to be disappointed they're going to take Jamar Chase.
No, you're going to cheer with us. I promise you.
You know what? Marvin Lewis said this a million times. Don't worry about what you can't control. So I'm not going to worry about it anymore. Just not going to worry about it. They're not going to do what I want them to do. So,
Coach Jackson, what direction do you think that they'll go in?
Jamar Chase.
Okay, Matt, what direction?
I think it's gonna be Chase too.
Andre,
they brought in Reef. They didn't bring in any receivers. You know what I mean?
Right.
To Matt's point, and bear with me, I'm an attorney, so I bill by the hour. So I'm going to talk a little bit here. But it's going to be Jamar Chase.
You got to close it out. We're already over on time. You got to,
like my brother.
You got to tell them who they're going to pick.
It's going to be Chase because
the
only play that they made in the offseason for a receiver was the offer to Kenny Golladay. But Kenny Golladay, by all accounts, approached them. They've totally ignored that position. They need an alpha dog. When Coach Taylor started, he had Damian Willis because AJ got hurt in training camp in 2019. Damian Willis started the opener in 2019. You go from Damian Willis, you say, Coach Taylor, here's your Jamar Chase. Your job may be on the line. Get yourself an elite receiving option. Go fix your offensive line in the later rounds where the value is. It's going to be Jamar Chase, and welcome aboard. Last thing. Thank you, us, for having me on. I do regret I do perceive this notion that some people on Team Chase will say, if they draft Jamar Chase, I'm going to be disappointed. If I'm clearly on Team Chase, I think he's the best player. I think he's the better prospect. I think, frankly, he's a better prospect, in my opinion, than Penei Sewell. But regardless of that, if they end up taking Penei Sewell, I'm going to be ecstatic because Penei Sewell is an elite prospect. You can't go wrong. So I just want to see some love for Jamar Chase, like the
same way. Yeah, I want to see them embrace it too. Evan, what would you like to? What direction do you think the Bengals will go?
I see them going with Chase.
Okay. And based off of not any numbers or anything like that, can you just tell me briefly, without going to any numbers or whatever, just tell me why do you think that Jamar Chase could work on this offense based on the draft pool that is there in the second, third round, that is not a big drop-off like Coach Jackson is trying to make it. And everybody believes him too because it's Coach Jackson.
Well, look, all right. So PFF has 10 tackles listed inside the top 50 of their big board. So even if we assume that 7 or 8 of them go off the board by the time they come back around, you're still looking at guys with top 50 grades there. And though I say, yes, you want a first-round talent of offensive line, this is a deep class. So you're getting offensive talent of a first-round caliber in another year in the second round. People get too caught up in where a team picks someone as opposed to what their talent level is. And I actually looked, and in the last 5 seasons, now we're dealing with a small sample, the top 10 tackles in the last 5 seasons, it's not as much as you would think in terms of the top guy from that draft was the best or constantly was so good. I think there were 28 total tackles in the last 5 seasons that ranked inside the top 10 at some point, and only 4 of them were chosen first. 4 out of 28. So as sure as everyone was before the draft going, this is the best tackle. Luke Jokel and Eric Fisher, these guys are the best. Can't miss. They're so great.
Right.
There's only 4 of the guys in the last that were the first overall tackle taken. Now, there are more than half of them in the first round. Again, it goes back. You want a first-round talent. You don't need the top guy because you're not sure or as certain as we pretend to be about Penei Sewell, because he's an exceptional prospect, exceptional. PFF loves him, but we can't just sit here and be so certain and say that there's not a 40 to 50% chance that these guys end up busting. It's just the reality of the situation. And I think like Matt, with Riley, signing Riley Reed, adding Pollock, re-signing Quentin Spain, and then counting on a healthy Xavier Su'a-Filo, they've left a wide receiver-sized hole on their roster right now, and it just makes sense for them to go that way based on how they've done this. And the last thing I'll add, Daniel Jeremiah tweeted earlier today that he was talking with a D-line coach, and the takeaway that they had for talking about offensive line was that it's more important that you have average guys as opposed to having really bad holes at certain positions and one good guy. You're going to game plan to attack their weak point on their offensive line. You want to be average at all positions. That gives you the best chance to have a successful O-line. The O-line unit is valuable. A specific O-lineman is less valuable.
And we're not combating that. We're not combating that. But when you have Riley Reef and Jonah, that's supporting what you're saying. You're adding Penei Sewell to make an average line.
Well,
I don't think we're going to
now where you're talking about putting him in a guard spot where you can get a guard for the third or fourth round, like a Ben Cleveland, or when you're looking at right tackles, the top 10 cap hit of a right tackle in free agency is an average of $11 million.
But we're thinking about the entire NFL when we look at those numbers. What about the Bengals in the first round compared to the Bengals in the second round and the linemen that they've drafted? Not all 32 teams, because from second to the later round, they haven't been good at hitting on those linemen.
You also introduce a positional learning curve if you start Sewell out at guard. You know, John Ogden did that back in '96, but there's in addition to the rookie learning curve, now you're going to add a positional learning curve for Penei Sewell at guard. You know, you want an immediate impact, no question, and that's Jamar Chase. I love Penei Sewell too, but it's just Jamar Chase.
All right.
It's either way it goes. Like Zim was saying, I still think, even though obviously I'm in the trenches with Penei Sewell, I do think that they will take Jamar Chase. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not going to do that.
And our good friend Malik Wright reported yesterday, and he had a special announcement yesterday. If you guys don't follow him, check him out. That's our boy. He made a special announcement that he says that the Bengals, he's 95% sure that they're selecting Jamar Chase. So if you guys hadn't heard that before, that's something that you should definitely check out. I thank everybody for coming on the roundtable tonight for Civil War Part 2. We went through a lot of different difficulties and we navigated through the storm. And here we are. We got new uniforms coming on Monday. We got Hugh Jackson with a brand new job. We got Matt Minnick killing it really quick. Nobody can be long-winded because we are super, super over on time. Please tell everybody where they can find you, starting with Elise, please.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter, Elise Jessie TV. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate your service.
Really appreciate it.
Good to with all of you guys.
Yes. Coach Hugh Jackson, where can they find you at?
Hugh Jackson, Hugh Jackson 5, Instagram.
Matt Minnick.
Coach Minnick, spelled like that, on Twitter. Pretty much everything ends up there.
Appreciate it. Andre.
At Andre Parada 13. It's been a pleasure joining everybody here. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you, sir. And Evan.
You can find my personal account on Twitter at eMcPhil, and also follow the PFF_Bengals account for plenty of good PFF Bengals information, and make sure you catch yourself a PFF subscription.
Definitely. And Zim, we have to end this with a yes.
Sirski Civil
world. What separated your deep ball from everybody else?
My deep ball, it has a little secret sauce to it, man.
Never get too high, never get too low, but just keep moving.
The whole story is Carlos never beat me in any kind of